I got to get a little icebreaker out here just to calm myself down. And we'll just keep this up here until the end. Anybody that knows Judy knows what's going on. I'd like to thank everybody for being here. This is going to be a little bit of a non-traditional service. We have about 6 or 7 people that will come up here and speak and just give their, something short about their experience with Judy and what she meant to them. And then we will have Pastor Gary Cattell pray, and then we will be dismissed for lots and lots of food over at the Gospel Tabernacle. So thank you all for coming today and for all of the support many of you have given us as a family during the past 8 weeks and even the past 8 years. The recent arduous months were eased by your comforting words, prayers, and financial contributions. Like many of you, I'm just absolutely heartbroken. But I know by honoring Judy today and bearing witness to her impact on our lives, the heartbreak will be reduced, if only just a little bit. So let's move outside ourselves and allow who she was to preside over the next hour or so. And relax, I'm not going to go blathering on for an hour. At the end, I also hope we'll be honoring another as well, and we will bear witness to him. So it's 1982. My buddy Todd and I are sitting in the student lounge at Penn State, New Kensington, and we're all forlorn because we barely earned a passing grade in chemistry. Our classmate Rufner's over there, and he's all happy. He's over chatting with a couple of girls. And when they leave, Todd says, "Hey, you're in all our classes. How do you know all these girls? There's like one girl in our whole class and all the classes we have." And yeah, Rufner, I say, "You're no better looking than I am." And that's not really saying that much. The dudes, he says, "I met them in an educational psychology class last spring. It's an easy elective. There are like 25 girls and 2 guys in the whole class. And you do jumping jacks every morning, and you get into little groups and stuff." He said, "You got to go take this class." So that spring, Todd and I, we took the class. And the only purpose of taking the class was to meet women. That's the only reason. And we get in there, and it's just as Rufner said, jumping jacks every class, 25 girls, my buddy Todd and I, one other guy, we're all in little groups. And the first day of the class, one of the girls stands out among all the others. The reason is that her name is Judy Tyborowski, and she's all huddled in a corner, keeping to herself like a little puppy at the back of the cage. Who believes that? Who thinks that's the way she was there the first day? That's not Art Jungi. No. Her raspy voice and boisterous laugh all but drowns out the professor most of the class. She's unabashed, loud, chatty. I tell Todd after class, I said, "That girl needs to be put in her place." And he says, "Well, you go ahead and put her in her place then." And I said, "You watch, I will." Next class, the professor has her up front playing Pop Goes the Weasel and some other kid tunes on her flute for some reason. And she's up there dancing and bobbing around, and she is just like the bright light of the whole class. She just takes over. And it just didn't seem right. But like anyone of strong character, guess what happened? She ends up being the one to put me in my place. You know how she did that? Just by being herself. Just by being herself. Because that's the way she was. Anybody that knows her, that's exactly what she would have been like when you first meet her. And of course, I fall in love with her. Who wouldn't? So we both moved to Penn State main campus. I stopped by her apartment one evening in February 1984 now. Skip ahead a little bit. For coffee like I usually do. And this older couple's there. And she appears distraught. She tells me she's going to some sort of outreach service and I should go home. I get really angry, but I go home anyway. And she goes to that service anyway. And after the first service, she phones me and says, she can't see me anymore. I didn't understand what was going on. So the next night, I find this place where the service is being held. And I barge in there, and I'm determined to give that man in charge a real smooth uppercut to the chin. Because I was pretty stacked at that time. Seeing the photographs. He's stealing my girl. But instead I meet a man I couldn't fight. Nor did I want to. This man appeared to me as clearly as he did to Apostle Paul on his way to Damascus. And as he appeared to many others throughout the past history, given the free gift of spiritual birth. And at that point, God himself completely split us apart. That's all the way I could say it. Judy and I, we barely spoke for 3 years. We saw each other occasionally. I lived in State College, she lived in Pittsburgh. However, in the winter of 1987, just out of the blue, I drove down to Trenton and I proposed to her without any warning. Knocked on her apartment door, had the ring. It was smaller than what Sarah has now. Had the ring with me. And she accepts without any hesitation. She says she believes Proverbs 16:9. A man plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps. And you've heard Judy say that scripture all the time. And she said, I knew he would direct you back to me, mister. And she always said, use mister to tease me, to be emphatic. And after we got engaged, her family was sitting right here. They're like, who did you get engaged to? You haven't seen anybody in years. Isn't that the way it was? That was 30 years ago last August. So that was just the greatest 30 years of my life. We had 3 children together, and she raised them with love and sacrifice, just like many of you did. When Kristen wanted a rabbit, she not only bought Kristen a rabbit, but she formed and ran her own 4-H club, 4-H rabbit club. She didn't send her kids pastorally to Sunday school. She taught it as well, even had Bible studies in our house. She was a fireball when it comes to education, and she was tough and relentless. But it's real easy to be happy when everything's going well. It's easy to be happy when you have your health and life is going the way you want it to. Try it when your health is failing and your world begins to crumble around you. And you women know us men are the biggest babies of all. So much as a cold or the flu, we're like sniffling and whining around, laying in bed. But Judy's health began to fail 8 years ago, before cancer struck. And her favorite scripture sits framed on the back table back there. From everyone who's been given much, much will be demanded. And that's, a truncation of that scripture. And it's tempting to think this just applies to someone else. Someone rich, someone who has everything. That's not the case. Wealth? We didn't have any wealth. Health? Not anymore. Fame? Far from it. She might have been close as a professional flutist. She was very good. She didn't have any kind of position. Left field maybe sometimes. But she wasn't given any of those things. What she was given was love and passion, and lots of it. And you don't have to be religious to recognize the root of unconditional love. And in the past couple years, inhuman fortitude. And that's the way she fought the last few years. Over the past 18 months or so, Judy endured over 250 doctor's appointments, 10 surgeries, 8 or 10 hospital stays, abscesses from a weakened immune system, 60 brain lesions that left her weak, disoriented, and suffering with seizures. At one point, the outer layer of her skin on her hands and feet sloughed to where she had to sit with her hands just like this for weeks, just up in the air. I had to buy her gloves from the chemotherapy. In November this year, she was taken from the first floor to the fourth floor of the hospital for a few days before discharge. I was coming down the hall and one of the nurses stopped me. It's like, "Hey, Mr. Kojadanovich." Well, she tried to say Kojadanovich. We were all fighting over who gets to take care of your wife. She's always our favorite patient. Even after what I told you, she was still their favorite patient. And that's that love spoken of in Corinthians 13. Patient, kind, hopeful, not self-seeking. A love that keeps no record of wrongs done and does not dishonor others. And that's the kind of love she had. And I think she thought she was such a burden that she tried harder the other way to make sure she wasn't being a burden to people. But we brought her home on hospice care. About 2 weeks before she left us, I had made her breakfast. And eggs and toast and yogurt, bacon and fruit, because she really needed her protein in the morning, and that's when she was good. You know, she needed to get all that nutrition in the morning. And she wanted a piece of chocolate cake. For some reason, in the last couple of weeks, all she wanted was chocolate cake. You know, it was like she was pregnant again. You know? And I said she had to eat most of that other stuff first, and then I'd get her the cake. So I looked over, and she had eaten everything, and I sliced off a piece of cake. And I walked into the dining room, I noticed a big pile of rye bread pieces like underneath her phone stand over there. I was like, "What's this?" She smiled and shrugged. She goes, "Oh, no." I said, "You threw that piece of toast over there for the dog, didn't you? But he didn't eat it." "I don't know." And my sister was there. I said, "You're no help here, Marge. She looked at me and she goes, "Just give me my cake, mister." And I knew she was having a good day. Any time she used that word mister, it was a good day for her. Then I gave her a cake, and I noticed she had jammed the bacon into her pajamas and was feeding it to the dog too. One more thing and I'll finish. She gave me this card on our 25th anniversary. She was already sick at this time. Not real bad, but not with cancer, but with some other things. And I had to transcribe it because her handwriting is so horrific. There was no way you could possibly read it. So this is what she told me. "To my special husband who brings many spices to life. I would not be who I am today if our lives were not so intertwined. Although I'm not perfect, with a few health flaws, haha. You love me and I am in awe. I know the future will be as adventurous as the first 25 years. You're such a godly gentleman that many will try to pattern their lives from you. As Sarah put it to me one day, I want a man with Dad's qualities. Not looking like me." She has no idea the depth of what that means, but I do. Thanks for being the wonderful man that you are. To the future with a man I could not live without. Judy. After 10 years of marriage, I wrote her this poem. We often wrote each other little notes and poems just like many couples do. And we always have our favorites, you know. And I'm not a very good artist. This poem I entitled "Running Through Seagulls." If we run together, I hope it will be through seagulls, scattering the stick-legged creatures in a wake. If we run through seagulls in shorts in the spring, our future's molten and malleable, I hope the sun will set before one of us must stop and wave goodbye. Judy waved goodbye to us on December 5th at 8:35. Sarah and Gregory, Joe and I stayed right next to her all night. Kristen was there on her speakerphone. She was still down in South Carolina. We must have fallen asleep somewhere around, after 8. There's some photographs that we had taken like right after 8 o'clock or in the morning. And I was lying on one side of her, and Sarah was lying on the other side of her. And I awakened to hear and see one final sigh. And I swear I heard Sarah say that was her last breath, but she was sound asleep. That everybody was asleep except for me. And that was her last breath. And we're not alone. 1 Corinthians 35 says, someone will ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body will they come? But what you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And when you sow, you do not plant the body that will be, but just a seed. And as you know, Judy loved gardening. That was her best hobby that she had. She could grow anything. And she would always start her garden crops down in the basement from seed. And she always called those seeds her little babies. And some of those seeds were no bigger than a fleck of dust. The body is sown a natural body, it's raised up a spiritual body. All those photos that we saw of her life, there appeared a backdrop of eternity. And that backdrop just brimmed over in her. And that she touched so many people. And this is her legacy. In 2 Corinthians 3, you show that you are a letter from Christ, an epistle, the result of our or her ministry, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not on tablets of stone, but on tablets of human hearts. I'm the result of her ministry in my life. And many of you are too. Once again, I hope the sun will set before one of us must stop and wave goodbye. We talked about that poem around the basement coal stove, where for many years we sat for hours in the winter just chatting and enjoying one another. And any of our kids' friends that come over, they'd know in the wintertime, that's where Judy's mom and dad would eat, down by the coal stove, just sitting there. And I don't know what they're doing down there, just sitting. I'll never forget, a couple years ago, she looked over at me, she goes, "Are you sure you want to grow old with me, mister?" I said, "It depends how saggy and baggy you get." She looked up and she says, "Well, you're already saggy and baggy." I wanted to grow old with her. With all my heart, I did. On that morning, she stopped and waved goodbye. I also waved goodbye. But at that moment, she's waving goodbye. Jesus stuck out his hand, grabbed that tiny hand, that hand ravaged by chemotherapy. It's all red and peeling. And I let her go to him again. And I'm sure he lifted her in his arms and said, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Come and share your master's happiness." Thank you all for listening to me share my experience with the most beautiful person in the world.